Are you on, Michelle?
Yes, I'm here.
Oh, I don't see you. Oh, there you are. Okay, are you gonna open the spreadsheet PowerPoint, or do I need to do that, or?
I will. I think Patrick was going to kind of give a little. Is Patrick on here?
Patrick is not going to make it today.
Ah,
So
so
I'm I will introduce myself.
okay, that sounds great. Let me get the PowerPoint up.
You know, a lot of the people I think already know me now. I've angered enough of them already, but so welcome everybody to our little town hall meeting for this first inaugural kind of program that we are kicking off called the personnel review cycle. This is a program that we are doing that has many layers for the reasons why. And I know it has generated a significant amount of anxiety among a lot of our partners out in the system because of the email, and maybe there's a lot of unknowns and you're struggling with how is this change going to affect how you do your job. And I truly hope after this meeting is over with, you will feel a lot more at ease with this process and recognize that this is being done with the primary objective to make all of our lives a lot easier, right? And it's not to make things more difficult. And so, Michelle, if you want to go to the slide. We will have a portion of later on where I will field questions, and if you have questions, you can type it in the chat box. I know some of you have already submitted some of the questions. I think from the ones that I've seen, I'm hoping I'm going to address probably 99.99%, because a lot of times what is communicated in the email can't be really effectively communicated from just having kind of this conversation with you all. So why did we put a hold on the pre-auths, the EPATs? I'll just give you kind of a little bit of a background that of our department and comp and the number that we get. Over the past few months, we have been averaging 100 or more pre-auths every week. Those are personnel transactions that include everything from new hires to refills, to reclassifications, to promotions, to demotions, to just market adjustments or equity adjustments, all these different transactions in which we have 2 full-time employees who dedicate, I would say 90% on a good week to even 100% on most weeks of their time just processing those actions, doing the equity reviews, doing all the things that we legally are required to make sure that we don't put ourselves into a bind as a one university system. If you annualize that number, that accounts to about 5,200 transactions. I have been in compensation for 22 years. I have worked in numerous organizations, from governmental to nonprofit to for-profit healthcare to oil and gas. I've worked for a Fortune 100 company, and my experience, I have never seen this many transactions occur as often as what is happening here. And so what the leadership has decided is that we want to try to move to a more strategic approach. Right now, all of the transactions being done tend to be reactive in nature, meaning something happens that causes you or your department to decide we need to change this person's pay or this person's position. And so everything is constantly reacting to what is occurring rather than trying to be proactive and position ourselves strategically to be able to meet all the needs throughout the year. there is also kind of a disconnect between the budgetary process and the HR transactions. We approach the budget process in April and May time period for the coming fiscal year, and we really do not have any kind of systematic plan for the personnel actions that we may do for the departments for that year. So the idea is to put a moratorium to a certain extent on personnel actions and shift people to begin to start thinking strategically and taking a more of a holistic approach to how we're going to pay our employees and the titles and the structures. And so the idea is that if we can shift all this time that we're spending in a reactive manner throughout the year and focus it into a 2-month period of planning in February and March, we will free up our time to be able to do all the other things that we really should be doing for you all, the customer. But we just can't at the moment because we don't have the staff. At the same time, we are hoping this process will create a system that's going to facilitate the approval process of the EPAF so that your pre-auths are not taking as long throughout the year because we've already done the legwork up front in February and March. It is a lot easier to analyze and do equity analysis for markets, for relative pay worth among positions by an entire department. If we have everybody on a single spreadsheet and we can look and see what it is you're wanting to do for the next coming year and look at it from that kind of holistic approach at once, okay? And so this entire process is set up so that we can try to achieve that and create more efficiencies for everybody, right? This is not a replacement to the pre-auth system or the EPAF system, all right? But the idea is we do the legwork, and then when it comes time to actually process the EPAF, then it's simply checking to make sure your request was on a spreadsheet that was approved months ago, and we hit yes. Will this cover all transactions? No, it's not intended to, right? There will be transactions that have to occur throughout the year. We recognize that. And I really want to alleviate everybody's anxiety and say, we are really, truly not trying to make your job more difficult and become more of an obstacle for how you go about doing your business for your department or division or college or whatever. This is really supposed to be a value-added process that's going to streamline everything. There will be exceptions where you will have to, for example, doing something as simple as a job refill, right? Somebody leaves and you need to fill a position. Of course, you can't budget that or know that in February or March. We will continue to process job refills throughout the year. We also recognize there will be times when things dramatically change, right? Statutory requirements. The state legislature could pass a law forcing universities to do something extra, right? That would require a department or division to increase their staff and increase what they're doing. So that requires more hirings or new job classes and new job titles. We fully recognize there will be those exceptions, and you do not need to worry that somehow we are going to be in the business of telling you, no, you have to wait till February or March to do those. What we're simply trying to do is cut down on the kind of often one-offs that are used because an employee comes in and complains, hey, I want more money, right? I don't have another job, but I just think I'm underpaid. And so then the department decides, okay, well, let's sit down and figure out what do we got to do? Let's reclass them. That's the easiest way to get money, right? And so that ends up happening is it causes in February and March and come up with a plan and say, look, here's our employees, here's our job. This is what we need to be successful. These are the gaps. Let's make the requests to make these changes now. It will aid everybody a lot by doing this process. At the same time, it will give you and your departments another piece of the pie to demonstrate during the budget process as to why you need additional money, right? Having a plan where you're spelling out your personnel transaction changes for the coming year, in which HR has signed off on it, that it makes sense from a market standpoint, it makes sense from an equity standpoint, and so forth, then you have that as a tool, as information that you can present in your budget process if you're needing to make a case for additional funding, right? We've never really had that kind of mechanism until now. This is what the personnel review cycle is going to do. And it's going to hopefully help the departments that have maybe in the past been left behind a little when it came to budgeting, right? You want to go to the next slide. Oh, I should point out, this does, one last thing, these requests, this cycle, this will impact everybody except for faculty, right? So it doesn't matter about funding sources. If you're grant funded, you'll need to be able to do this process once a year. If you make revenue like athletics through the athletic events, you're still going to need to sit down and try to come up with a plan for the coming year. Recognizing, yes, that we know things will change, especially with funding and grants, that may cause us to revisit it throughout the year, right? But you want to go ahead to the next slide, Michelle. So this is the kind of the timeline that we're looking at. There is, I will be completely honest with you, I don't sugarcoat things. I'm as candid as much as possible. There are still things we're working out because this is our first rodeo in trying something like this. And so with the institution, it's not something that is unusual for other organizations. Just about every company does this. Every for-profit, nonprofit institution does something like this. So this is not innovative by any means what we're doing. We're just finally trying to catch up. Having said all that, there's going to be a lot of unknown right now, and there's going to have to be a lot of flexibility. I keep telling people who I've talked to one-on-one that have contacted me that have anxiety, I've tried to alleviate and say, hey, we're really not here to make your job more difficult. You can trust me in the sense that we're going to use common sense in how we approach these things. All right. And so if it makes a business sense, if it makes a financial sense, of course, we're not going to tell you have to wait on anything. But the entire process for how we're going to submit these plans, how you, our customers, are going to sit down and come through and decide what personnel transactions you want to do for the coming year, is going to be done by an Excel spreadsheet that is currently being designed by me. It is going to be designed to be user-friendly. It is not going to be something in which you have to be a whiz in Excel to be able to function, to operate. I recognize we have people of all walks of life in this university. Some people use Excel daily, some people don't, but Excel is the easiest tool for us when we receive that information to be able to do what we have to do to analyze it. That design of that Excel sheet is currently in its beta stage of initial creation, and I'm currently modifying it, but that information will go out to everyone. We're looking at probably mid-January to end of January for that spreadsheet, right? Hopefully mid-January, so that the departments, you all have a couple of weeks with that spreadsheet just to see and to be able to phone me up and ask me, any specific user questions on how to operate it. But I promise you, the first priority is that it is going to be an easy user experience. It's not going to be complicated. It's not going to require you to run formulas or do anything other than just typing in things like employee name, employee title. And if you know Excel, you can even copy and paste that from another Excel file, right? And so it will be rather simple to use. The leaders of each college or division in the system will need to designate their coordinators. We're not even going to tell everyone that, say, for example, I'll pick on the liberal arts people because that's where my degree's from. The liberal arts college does not have to have one spreadsheet for the entire college. If the dean of the liberal arts college decides, you know what, I want this to be decided by the department level. And so I want each individual department head to have their own spreadsheet and to approach this exercise. That's perfectly fine, okay? We will just need to know who those coordinators are from each department somewhere around mid-January, ideally in a week or two. Of who's going to be that individual. It may be that it's decided that the HR head for that college is going to be responsible for all the different spreadsheets. It's whatever, but we just need that point of contact for every department, every college and every division. Sorry, my terminology is backwards here. We have division is higher than department, and I'm used to department being higher than a division. But anyway, I digress. The compensation team will then have follow-up meetings with those coordinators to talk about the submission and approval process, and even how we can assist you in helping to complete this Excel form and get the data to us that we need. All right, so it's not like this is a one and done meeting where you're going to be left on the hook. We plan to be there throughout the process with you to help assist to make this as easy as possible. Then we approach the kind of February to March timeframe. This is the time where you will actually work. The coordinators will work with the departments and to create the information and work with me and the comp team to assist you in coming up with your plan of action for how your personal actions for the entire year. All right. And then April through May, we will be coming back to the departments and validating information. We will be doing our review process. There is a lot behind the scenes of doing something as simple as a promotion or a job reclass that we have to do to try to make sure we limit legal liability in wage and hour laws and discrimination laws and things like that. In addition, there's other departments who have an impact in this process as well, from admin finance to Marcom and IT, reviewing job titles to make sure we have consistency in jobs that are in those areas. And so all that work is going to be done on the front end so that it makes it easier when it's time to do the EPATH or pre-auth, okay? We will also have the comp committees from each campus that exists, review and sign off the actions. The idea being that once this plan's approved, you will have the green light for the coming fiscal year starting July 1 to essentially submit your pre-auths or EPATHs into the system throughout the year, and the approval process becomes cake because now everybody on every end has the pre-approved spreadsheet of actions that are allowed, and it won't take weeks or a month to process your job changes, which hopefully will increase employee satisfaction, because I know what ends up happening is usually an employee is informed that they're going to get a promotion, and then the action is entered into the system, right? So as an employee, I'm having to wait maybe a month or two for an action to come through when I've been told I'm getting this increase or whatever. And then, there's the issues of, we also have extra administrative steps for retro pay if the action doesn't end up getting approved from the time in which they started doing the job. All this adds inefficiency and more administrative cost to something that should be very simple and easy to do, right? So, Michelle, next slide. What happens after the PRC? And that's the term, I'll give Dorothy credit for that. She came up with the acronym. And coming from the military, I love acronyms. PRC is perfect. PRC, as I said a little while ago, is not a replacement for pre-auths. It is the work that needs to be done so that we can speed up the process for the pre-auths. Once the forms have been submitted and approved and sent back to the departments, then starting on January 1st or any other date. So I should mention that, all right? You can even decide in February or March, maybe your budget can't fully accommodate an increase for the entire fiscal year starting July 1. This is where it becomes really helpful that you can play with the dates and say, you know what? We want to take Joe and we want to promote him, but we can't really afford it at the full amount for the full fiscal year. So we're gonna make the promotion effective in January, middle of the fiscal year, so it has less of a budget impact. So you'll be able to do all these transactions throughout the year, but you can start submitting your pre-auths starting July 1. The one thing you need to note, though, is that if, and I do mean if, I do not want anyone leaving this saying, Everett, the comp director says this is happening, but if the regents were to approve an increase, which they haven't, right? Just want to make that clear. Those increases usually would take effect July 1. Those would go in first before any increase would happen from the PRC. All right. So those merit increases or whatever type of increase that the regents ultimately end up approving, if they do it all, would go in first before the transaction. So that is why we're saying, there's really no need or no reason to even be submitting your EPAF pre-auths in June, right? Just wait until July. It will make things a whole lot easier, just in case. Now, throughout the fiscal year, the departments and colleges can continue to fill your vacancies, right? Counteroffers. To counteroffer an employee who got an offer for a job with another organization or another department. Of course, you can still submit those, right? And in essence, this last caveat, and other HR approved actions. The key being HR approved, me. And it's really me and Dorothy. But at the end of the day, we are not going to deny a department or make a department's life completely miserable if something unforeseen happens and they need to do pre-auths outside of this spreadsheet. That's the language that kind of gives us the caveat to allow us to say, you know what, we're going to use common sense. All right, we're not going to be bureaucrats and read letters line for line, words for words. We're going to operate common sense. If it makes business sense, if it makes financial sense, of course, we are not going to prohibit or inhibit something, right? That's not what we're here to do. We're just simply trying to become a little more strategic in the overall process and a little more efficient. Now, having said all that, even if a circumstances arises and you can't get me for whatever reason on board with, yes, we need to do this, there still is another out. And that is, you can go through your appropriate senior vice president or designee and get them to sign off on that this needs to be done. And if that happens, then we will do ePath and pre-auth transactions outside of this PRC cycle. All right, so it's a cycle that doesn't cover or eliminate all transactions. There are exceptions, and there's multiple exceptions, right? So at the end of the day, if the president of the university decides, or your senior vice president decides, you know what, this needs to be done, this was unforeseeable, I'm okay with us doing this, then at the end of the day, we're going to allow it and it's going to be done. So this is not the big boogeyman that might appear to have been by the email that we had sent out, before the break, right? Next slide, Michelle. Michelle, you there for the next slide or no? So a question just came in for grants. So yeah, that's a perfect example where maybe you have a situation where you didn't know, no one could foresee that a new grant was going to come up. That's where I use the common sense thing. There's a new grant, you got the money, you got the grant, and now you got to hire new people. Makes sense? Or maybe you need to reorganize because of this grant to free up people to be able to operate and do this grant. All that stuff makes sense, and that's perfectly fine. And of course, we would approve or process it outside the PRC. What we're wanting and why we didn't exempt all grant positions or grant funding was that there are some grants that we know are yearly or that are multiple years that we know are going to occur for the coming year. And you probably have an idea or know that maybe the grant has specific language that you have to give an increase to these employees, as it's outlined in the grant contract, right? Those things that that's what we want to capture in the PRC, right? Recognizing that there will be those exceptions to situations when it comes to grants or funding in general, right? We could go through this entire process, knock on wood, and come December, the economy crashes in Oklahoma, the legislature cuts all funding off of higher education, and we end up, needing to completely restructure, right? I think at that point, the PRC is out the window, and we would have to adapt to whatever the situation is at that time, right? And so it's kind of the same thing for grant funding. Let's see. So here's some common questions that we got from physicians. I also want to point out that this is one piece of a multi-pronged approach of what we're trying to do to overhaul the compensation function and make us more efficient and be able to provide a better value to you all, our customers. All right, so moving this and freeing up some of our FTE is one program out of a 3-program approach that we currently have underway. Some of you are aware of those programs because you're sitting on the committees, but I just want to point out and give you kind of the big picture understanding and reasons for all this. And that is the first committee is the Compensation Guidelines Committee. We are on an endeavor to streamline our business processes among the campuses when it comes to compensation, employee transactions related to compensation, and creating documentation for how we do things and what do we do. And so this is a major project that, because we don't really have anything documented right now, It is necessary. It is really, really hard to administer a compensation program without anyone and everyone agreeing on what those program guidelines are. And so this project is kind of going on. The guidelines has just kicked off today, actually, with our first meeting. That is going on. And in addition, we are beginning to do career pathing titling. I know a lot of people are not happy with the Mercer study. There were some challenges to that being implemented. There were some issues created with probably the titling and collapsing of some titles that probably shouldn't have been collapsed down. And so part of us becoming more strategic is we have identified or working with a specific department to come up with a way to overhaul their job titles and create a little more efficiency and create a way for employees to have career development and career progression. Okay, so for example, I'm going to use IT as an example. They actually are the department we're working on first. The technology support specialist level 1. You're kind of hired into that job, and it's kind of a dead-end job where no real way to get to the next level. No one's really quite sure how you get to a strategist, right? No, there's no clear link from a technology support specialist to a technology support strategist, right? So we're going in and we're overhauling their job descriptions and coming up with skills, identifying the skills that each level of the job is required to be able to perform that job. And as employees develop those skills that are verifiable, measurable, documentable, then they can progress to the next level. It becomes a really, really sweet recruiting tool to be able to hand a potential applicant a sheet of paper and say, this is where you start, and this is where you could end if you do all these things. Right? It makes recruitment very, very easy. This is honestly what the military does. How do you recruit 18-year-olds to sign up to join the infantry? You do that. You show them this is where you are now. This is what you have to do. If you do all this stuff, this is what you can be. Easy peasy sell. The idea is to implement the same thing, and we're testing it out on the IT. Now, this is a pilot program, and it's a pilot program because we don't have the bandwidth for me and my team to do this for everyone. I would love to be able to offer every department this right now, but I've got 2 FTE spending 80 hours a week processing transactions, right? So this PRC will free up time so that we can focus more on this career pathing, which I think ultimately is going to have a bigger impact, a more positive impact to everyone, right? And so that's all that's being kind of juggled right now are these 3 things. And so individually, when you look at this stuff, each piece might not make sense when you say why, but when you see it from the overall perspective, you go, oh, okay, that makes sense. And that's what we're trying to accomplish. Now, here's some of the common questions that we've kind of gotten. I've addressed some of these, but I'll just quickly roll through some of them. Does a planning spreadsheet mean you don't have to submit an EPATH? No, you still have to do an EPATH. The planning spreadsheet is planning out the transaction. Right, it's the planning of what we're going to do. The EPATH is the actual doing of it. So if you want to think in terms, the planning spreadsheet is kind of the why, and the EPATH is the what, right? So how will the approval routing process work for the planning spreadsheet? We're still working that out. Like I said, I don't have all the answers. I won't fill you with full of sunshine. It will be worked out, that entire process. But you know, I always think of a famous quote of President Eisenhower. He had once said that plans are useless but planning is indispensable, meaning you have to sit down and make plans, but you have to recognize at the end of the day, those plans are not going to be the thing that you ultimately do, but you'll be prepared when you're making the decisions on the fly because you did the planning. All right. And so this is kind of the approach that of how we are operating with these projects, because everything is so new for everybody. Does the PRC apply to occasional, temporary, voluntary student postdoc positions? Actually, I think I'm not really sure as far as new hires, like refills and stuff, they're still allowed, right? And postdoc positions are they classified as employees or as faculty? If they're employees, they would be impacted.
They're usually on the academic side, Everett.
Yeah, they're on the academic side, so it wouldn't apply. And the students, it's the academic side, right? So it's not going to apply.
Right, it wouldn't apply to students.
This is really just the staff positions that we're talking about. So do you know if DCM will be allowed to process increases associated with certifications? Okay, so this is a good illustration of a type of increase that we would definitely allow to go through. Some departments, some colleges, some divisions, they have specific positions that require specific certification to get into that position, or specific education of some type to get in that position. A lot of times, employees are hired in at a lower level while they're working on that certification or education in order to qualify for that higher level position. Of course, those are going to still be allowed to go through. You don't have to have them in the PRC to be able to still do those. Now, if you have a good idea of those who are going to complete the program, it wouldn't be a bad idea to put them on the planning spreadsheet and say, hey, this is what we're anticipating these people, recognizing that you could very well have somebody that is working on it that you just don't know about it. You know, the example that came up that happened in real life circumstances, we had a security officer that became CLEAT certified, so he could become a police officer. Right, he's been with us as a security officer, and now he's CLEAT certified. And you know, if are we going to allow that to go through? Well, yeah, because we have police officer postings right now for vacant positions open, and we have a current employee who, if we didn't allow the transaction to go through, they would just apply for that position as a police officer on the job posting, right? So of course, we're going to allow for the reclass that occur to make them a police officer. It's just common sense. We're trying to operate by the belief of, you know, let's keep this simple and keep this as easy as possible. Next slide. Research grants. Yep, we kind of covered that. So we recognize there's going to have to be flexibility when it comes to grant positions. We still feel like some grants will be able to be indicated on the PRC because you just know you have them. But we recognize that things can change and a new grant come in that you did not think or did not know you would have. And of course, we will make accommodations. And I don't envision any senior vice president saying no. And I honestly don't envision myself or Dorothy even saying no. So I would not be too worried about that. Must departments wait to hire new staff? No, of course not. Unless it's a new position. If it is a refill, nothing changes. Now, if you are a department, say, I'm trying to think who I can pick on. If you are purchasing and you've decided, you know what, we do not have a compensation analyst for our department. We have an HR person, but we want a compensation person. That is a new position. right? That we are going to strongly encourage that it is involved in the PRC process so that it is tied to the budget process more as opposed to an ad hoc, right? Ad hoc that is done throughout the year. Does that mean at the end of the day, if push comes to shove, if the senior VP over purchasing decides, no, this is important, we want to do this, will they still be able to do it? Yes. But we're really, really hoping we catch those kind of jobs, because those are the most difficult, that take the most time for us to process. Because we've got 3 campuses and what, 10, 15,000 employees, in which we are trying to maintain a kind of equitable relative worth among the job classes. And so anytime a department or college wants a 100% new position, it causes us to have to go back in and evaluate the entire system and make sure that this department isn't going to create any type of inequity with this type of new hire. Okay, so just got a question, Tony Carl. Will the planning spreadsheet somewhat mirror the reports available on PeopleSoft? I do not know what reports you have access to.
Everett, I can help with that, and
Okay.
I can show you what headings they have in their queries, and you can take that into consideration on the spreadsheet.
Yes, so, but to answer your question, of course, it's going to be similar. It's even going to be similar to the EPATH field, right? So you have the EPATH and a pre-auth, and you have to type in the information and submit all this stuff, and it flows through and gets approved by your chain of command, and then eventually flows over to HR, right? And so we have to have that information to do our job. It's going to be similar to that information that's being asked for in the pre-auth, just in an Excel format, if that makes sense. But we would definitely take into consideration that. Do you anticipate a similar type of PRC for faculty? I do not anticipate. I have no control. I do not oversee faculty, and I am not aware of any discussions in regards to that. That would be a provost
I think
question.
Marty Walton has answered that in the chat.
Oh, okay. Oh, perfect. So reclassifications of current positions. Yes, that's the position where we're seeing a lot of that. We would like for the units to sit down and think those through for the coming year, if possible. All right, so it's those type of reclasses of an occupied position that we're getting a lot of that throughout the year, that's causing a lot of inefficiency. So if at all possible, you can sit down with your leadership and your admin teams and come up strategically with a plan to address any reclasses, restructures, reorganizations that you might need or want to do in the coming year. That's when we ask you to do that during the February and March. And so it's those types of transactions that will be, I'm trying to think of the word, it's going to be restricted, but it's not necessarily going to be a no. Because once again, we go back to, we're going to operate with common sense, right? If it passes a smell test, if it comes in and it sounds like this is the thing that needs to be done now, and there was no way we could foresee that it needs to be done, then of course you're not going to have an issue with me not allowing that reclass to go through, even if it's outside of PRC. All right, I can't think of a circumstance outside of maybe if there was something I thought that was fraudulent, but I really have never seen that yet. I don't really anticipate, just based off of my experience working with you all since July. But if there were some transaction that just did not smell right from that kind of a standpoint, then I would probably not allow it, and it would trigger you having to have that conversation with your executive VP to, get that approval. If we have a reclassification, we need to make effective prior to this PRC going through. And I don't want to say no. I don't want to say yes. How about we talk specifically about specifics, and we can see what it is. We're technically in a moratorium trying to get caught up with all of the current pre-auths so that we can kick it into high gear, and deal with the February, March timeframe. But I don't want to give a definitive answer until I know the specifics. But we will definitely work with you on that.
And
There may,
Warren Churchill had one up above.
Warren, I'm assuming
assuming
with change and replacements, I do not have to continue to do rudimentary letters to executive VP to simply replace positions at the same level. I cannot change what your executive VP requires you to do. Okay, so any procedures that your VP has outlined for you to have to follow for whatever reason, you're still going to have to follow. Okay, because it's not universal across every department, college, or division in the entire system. So I want to reiterate, the PRC is not replacing anything as far as processes. The ePath and all your normal business processes will continue on. This, I know, I hate to say this, but this is an additional item that will provide strategic value in the long run for the entire university. Has the budget timeline been developed yet by the budget office to coincide with this process? As HR decisions are being made into May, the budget system will need to be altered. But we are locked out at the end of April last year. Yeah, that's a good question. I will have a follow-up meeting and find out the answer. My understanding, this entire process was kind of pitched to admin finance, to the VPs, to our CFO, and to the president, to the high-level people that all said, yes, this makes sense. This is what we want to do. And so I would imagine the budget piece, the finance piece would coincide sometime after, after March, so April, May, for that. But we'll have to check, because that's kind of the whole point of doing this exercise. But I will definitely check just to make sure. What about pre-auths for new positions now, specifically for cross-training purposes for staff that have notified us of resignations coming before FY24? So what about them as far as, should they be included in the PRC, or can you do it right now? That would be a conversation we need to have on the specifics, so I fully understand what you mean by it, and when you need this position for cross-training purposes. That is kind of that, from the cursory view, that seems like a very strategic decision of doing some workforce planning, of trying to make a decision on hiring the right staff to be able to cross-train, to allow people to be more flexible, so that when you do have resignations, everything doesn't come to a screeching halt. So I could say I could be sold on that as something that we could look at possibly now, or outside of the PRC cycle, but we would definitely need to have more conversations. Is Bart on this call? I don't know. Okay, so no, he isn't. Good, awesome. I don't know if that's good or bad. Try to think. Oh, next slide. I don't know if there's another one after this or if this was the last one or not. We've got about 10 minutes. So here's the kick. At the end of the day, first off, what we're going to do is we're taking your questions and we're going to update and have this kind of FAQ page where these common questions are going to be listed. We have some up there right now, but as they come in more, we will continue to update it and add more to it to be of value. I personally do not mind talking to anybody who has issues or concerns one-on-one. I'm a strong believer in handling issues at the lowest level possible. So if you have questions, comments, concerns, feel free to hit me up. I travel. I am on the HSC campus. I'm also on the Norman campus. And once a month or so, I even travel up to the Tulsa campus. So having a phone number is really, really hard. And so that's why I say contact me by Microsoft Teams. It's the easiest way. I have it installed on my cell phone and you can call me or text me through Teams, or you can hit my email. If it's something in which you feel like you need to have a meeting with maybe your dean and us to discuss and to work out specifics for your college, I'm perfectly open to that too. Okay, so we're here to be of assistance and not make your life difficult, truly. And we're going to be as flexible as we possibly can, especially during this first year, to work out the kinks in this whole thing. And so a little bit of grace hopefully is extended to me, and I will definitely extend grace to you all. And so let's see, what we have. July 1st effective date listed as during a pay period. Will changes need to be all effective July 2nd to coincide with it? Yeah, okay, so yes, July 2nd, it would need to be coinciding with the first pay period begin date on or after July 1st. So that would be July 2nd. That is actually probably something we want to mark and we will put in the FAQs and update, because I know payroll would very much appreciate it for us not to have a mid payroll cycle adjustment of any kind. So any other questions? And like I said, there's my contact info. Oh, hey, we finished 7 minutes early. If you don't know me, I rarely ever go a full length of time. I always try to end meetings before. And so I keep my record for 22 years straight. And I'm wrong thinking that this may compound the workload for the compensation team addition to our current pre-auth 1s and 2s. Okay, so that is a good question. I don't think it's going to. I think what's going to happen is it's going to shift the work. And I kind of discussed this with Dorothy. The idea right now is our team is working nonstop every week, 40 hours a week doing these. I would much rather have us have 2 months where we're having to put in extra long hours. And I asked them to come in and work those 80-hour weeks. And with the idea that for the other 10 months, things are freed up for us. So that is they're freed up to be able to do other things. Sorry, I was drawing a blank as I was watching the chat roll through. So it could, but hopefully the pre-auths 1s and 2s become really, really simple to approve if we have enough people doing the PRCs so that they're not having to do all that legwork throughout the year. And so then that kind of ties in with one of the questions we had was, hey, do you ever have plans to release the statistics? We want to know what the average rate of pay to the midpoint is for our jobs, just to know whether or not we're competitive. Yeah, I would love to be able to do that. I would love to be able to send out on a weekly basis everybody's salary data for their department with their jobs, with their average pay of employees in that job class from the other departments, with it average, so that they can kind of get an idea, are they competitive even within their own OU system? I'd also love to be able to supply that external market data so you could see the market data, as well as turnover data and the time to fill or the time to offer for all that. That's all those data points are things that everybody should have in the director level above, so that they can make decisions based on data as opposed to a vacuum that currently exists. We can't do that right now because we don't have the FTE. So this is trying to free up that time so that we can start doing those things that truly would have value for you all and being able to make those difficult decisions. Will the PRC be similar to the budget component that we prepare for salaries for the upcoming FY? I would hope so. We will see. Like I said, it hasn't been completely designed yet. I would probably now try to get my hands on the budget component to see what it is that actually is being submitted for that. But yes, the idea would be that those would be similar and have that kind of data there. You know, if you're going to request for us to adjust someone's pay, you're definitely going to have had to have requested it for the budget, or you're not going to have the money to be able to do it, right? So they're definitely going to be similar.
Everett, there's one last question. Tanya had asked if you would be answering questions that were submitted prior to this town hall that were not addressed here or on the FAQs.
Yes, we will definitely do it on FAQ. I had read those and I thought I had addressed them in my kind of presentation. I apologize if I have not, but we will definitely do it by FAQ page. And if you need a quicker answer, you are more than free to call me, directly message me or whatever, and we'll get what you need. Can I email you the PowerPoint? Sure, you bet. We'll send it out, I'm assuming, to everybody that was on the invite or has agreed to attend. And so we'll do that. Let's see, don't read out loud. Oh, okay. Will not read out loud, since it said don't read out loud, but I will. There's anything else? If not, everybody have a great day. And like I said, feel free to touch base with me, and you will hear more from me in the future. And thank you for not hanging me. It was actually nice.